I never thought I'd find myself in this situation. My name is Ryan, and I considered myself a good husband. I married Lisa 5 years ago, and for the most part, we had a solid relationship. Sure, every couple has its ups and downs, what relationship does. But lately, things had felt off-kilter. I couldn't put my finger on it, but little things started to nag at me. For starters, Lisa became distant. She spent more time working late or hanging out with friends than usual. I'd come home and she'd be glued to her phone, a smile creeping across her face whenever she received a call or text. I asked her about it and she'd brush it off, saying, "You're just being paranoid, Ryan, it's just work stuff." I wanted to believe her, I really did, but trust is fragile and mine was starting to crack. Last month I noticed she'd changed her routine. She was suddenly obsessed with going to the gym, claiming she wanted to get in shape for summer. She'd leave the house in workout clothes and come back hours later, sweaty and winded, with a bit of a glow about her. I'd try to ask about her workouts and she'd give me vague responses. "Oh, you wouldn't understand the routines, babe, just a lot of cardio and weights." I kept my thoughts to myself, but in the back of my mind, I wondered if she was really at the gym or getting her cardio in somewhere else. The real turning point came on what started as an ordinary Wednesday. I had gotten off work early, excited to surprise Lisa with her favorite takeout. I thought we could have a cozy night in, just the two of us. As I walked in, I heard laughter coming from the living room. I assumed it was just something funny on TV. I dropped the takeout on the kitchen counter and headed to the living room to find her sprawled out on the couch, giggling at her phone. But then I noticed it wasn't just her phone. There was a guy's voice coming from the screen. A familiar voice. I froze as I peered over her shoulder. It was her ex-boyfriend, Derek. They were FaceTiming and they didn't see me lurking there. I could only hear snippets of their conversation, but it was enough. "I always thought we had something special," he said, and her giggle in response made my stomach churn. My heart raced as I backed away slowly, trying to process what I just witnessed. It felt like my world had tilted off its axis. I was angry, hurt, and confused all at once. Why would she be talking to him? I thought she had moved on. I decided to confront her. When I finally gathered the courage to step into the living room, I acted casual, like nothing was wrong. "Hey, babe, who were you talking to?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She jumped, quickly turning the screen away from me. "Oh, it's just Derek. He was asking about the old group from college. You know how it is." I couldn't believe the words coming out of her mouth. I wanted to scream, but I took a deep breath and said, "Lisa, we need to talk. This isn't just some friendly chat." Her reaction was immediate, defensive, and dismissive. "You're being ridiculous, Ryan. Derek is just a friend. You know how much he meant to me back then. We're just catching up." I could feel the anger boiling inside me. I wanted to call her out on her lies, but I also felt a wave of sadness wash over me. Was I really standing here, questioning the woman I loved about her ex? But there it was, the flicker of guilt in her eyes as she spoke. I knew I had to dig deeper. How could she lie to my face so easily? The confrontation spiraled, and I didn't back down. I needed answers. I deserved answers. The truth was unraveling before me, and I was ready to face it, no matter the cost. What happened next would change everything. The confrontation only escalated from there. Lisa's initial defensiveness morphed into irritation, and her irritation quickly turned to anger. "Why do you always have to make everything about you, Ryan? You're so insecure," she exclaimed, crossing her arms over her chest. I could see the tension radiating off her, and it only fueled my determination. Insecure. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. "You're talking to your ex, Lisa. You're not just talking to him, you're laughing with him. If I'm insecure, then what does that say about you?" She rolled her eyes, dismissing my feelings as if they were an annoying fly buzzing around her head. "You're being dramatic. You know he's just a friend. You can't even handle me having friends without thinking something going on." But I wasn't buying it. Deep down, I felt a sense of betrayal that I couldn't ignore, a nagging voice in my head that told me this wasn't just about a casual chat. I pressed further. "How long has this been going on? This isn't just a catching-up conversation. There's something more here, isn't there?" For a moment her expression flickered, and I caught a glimpse of panic before she masked it with annoyance. "You're just overreacting. Maybe if you paid more attention to me instead of working all the time, I wouldn't feel the need to talk to someone else." The accusation hit like a punch to the gut. I had been working late to provide for us, and here she was, twisting the narrative. My heart raced, and I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes. I fought them back, refusing to give her the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. "Is that what this is?" I asked, my voice trembling. "You're trying to blame me for your own choices. If you're feeling neglected, why didn't you come to me? We could have talked about it, but instead you choose him." She shrugged, trying to look unfazed, but her eyes darted away from mine, betraying her uncertainty. "You wouldn't understand. You're too focused on your job to care about my feelings." I felt a wave of sadness wash over me. We had built a life together, and now it felt like it was crumbling before my eyes. I remembered the love we used to share, the laughter, the intimacy, the trust, and now here we were caught in this ugly mess. "You know what?" I said, my voice steadying as clarity began to take hold. "I deserve better than this. If you can't be honest with me, then what's the point of even trying?" That seemed to hit her hard. She opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. "I need time to think. If you want to talk to Derek, then do it. But know that I won't just sit here and let you disrespect our marriage." With that, I stormed out of the room, feeling like I had just stepped off a cliff into a dark abyss. I needed air, space, and time to process what I had just confronted. I took a long walk around the neighborhood, the cool evening air biting at my skin, but it did little to cool the fire of rage and betrayal that burned inside me. I thought about all the signs I had ignored, the late nights, the secretive behavior, the lies. It was all so clear now, and I felt like a fool for not recognizing the truth sooner. As I walked, I replayed the conversation over and over in my head, dissecting every word. Lisa's excuses felt flimsy, and the thought of her with Derek made my stomach churn. I couldn't believe she would risk everything we had for someone from her past. When I finally returned home, the house felt cold and empty. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall, my mind racing with thoughts. I needed proof, something concrete to validate my suspicions. I grabbed my phone and began searching for answers. I knew I had to find out what was really going on. If she was cheating on me, I needed undeniable proof. I had to know if this was just a one-time thing or if it was something deeper. That night, I decided to take the plunge. I went through her social media accounts, her texts, anything I could get my hands on. What I uncovered would solidify my worst fears and set off a chain of events I could never have anticipated. As I dug deeper, the truth began to reveal itself, piece by piece. It was worse than I could have ever imagined. I spent hours combing through Lisa's phone. I felt like a detective, piecing together a puzzle that was both maddening and heartbreaking. I found her social media accounts filled with interactions that made my stomach churn. Flirty messages exchanged with Derek, pictures of them together from when they had dated, and comments that hinted at a rekindled relationship. My heart raced with every click, every new revelation confirming my worst suspicions. One message stood out among the rest, one that felt like a dagger piercing through my heart. It was from Derek, sent just a few days prior. "I miss the way we used to be. Remember that night at your parents' house?" Lisa had replied almost instantly. "How could I forget? I think about it all the time." I felt sick, the memories of those moments she shared with him flooding my mind. How could she do this to me? How could she reminisce about their past while I was sitting just a few feet away, completely oblivious? After what felt like an eternity, I finally set the phone down, my hands trembling. I felt a mix of anger and sorrow wash over me, and I couldn't help but wonder how I'd let it come to this. I was furious with Lisa for betraying my trust, but I was even angrier at myself for not seeing the signs sooner. I had been so absorbed in my work and our life together that I had neglected to see her slipping away from me, inch by inch. The next day, I decided to confront her again, this time with undeniable proof. I needed to catch her off guard and see her reaction. I wanted to hear her excuses when I threw the evidence in her face. I felt like a volcano ready to erupt, and I knew I had to be careful not to let my emotions get the better of me. When Lisa came home from work that evening, I was already waiting for her in the living room, the tension in the air thick enough to cut with a knife. She looked surprised to find me home early, and for a moment I saw that familiar smile I had loved so much. but it faded as soon as she noticed the serious look on my face. "Ryan, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice laced with a hint of concern. "Sit down, Lisa. We need to talk." And this time I have proof. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to the messages I had found. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I handed it to her, watching her face as she read the exchange between her and Derek. At first she looked confused, then the color drained from her face. I can explain," she stuttered, stumbling over her words. "Explain what?" I interrupted, my voice rising. "How you miss him, how you think about your time together. Do you think this is just harmless fun?" Because it sure doesn't look that way to me. I saw her trying to compose herself, her facade cracking under the weight of the evidence. "It's not what you think, Ryan. I was just being nostalgic. It didn't mean anything." I felt my anger flare again. "Not what I think. You're telling me you're exchanging flirty messages with your ex and it's nothing. Do you think I'm that naive?" She opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. The silence grew unbearable as she fumbled for words, desperately trying to salvage her lies. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she finally said, her voice shaky. "It was just a moment of weakness. I was feeling lonely and he reached out." "Lonely?" I scoffed, incredulous. "You had me right next to you, Lisa. You chose to talk to him instead of coming to me. You chose to betray me." Her expression shifted from guilt to anger. "Don't act like you're the perfect husband, Ryan. You've been so wrapped up in your work that you've barely noticed me." I felt invisible. I was taken aback. Here we were, having a conversation about her cheating, and she was turning it around on me. "So what? You think cheating is the answer? Did you think I wouldn't find out?" The fight drained from her as she sank into the couch, burying her face in her hands. "I messed up, okay? I don't know how it happened. It was a stupid mistake." I stared at her, my heart aching for the woman I once loved, but also feeling betrayed and disgusted. "A mistake? You need to be honest with yourself, Lisa. This isn't just a mistake, it's a choice. And now I have to decide what to do with that choice." I could feel the weight of the moment. This was the turning point in our relationship. I had to determine whether I could forgive her or if this was the end of the road. The silence stretched between us, heavy and charged. I had never felt so lost, yet so determined. I needed to think, to process everything I had learned. I stood up, the decision looming over me like a storm cloud. "I need time, Lisa. I can't even look at you right now." As I walked away, I felt the ground beneath me shift. My world had changed in an instant, and I was left grappling with the emotional fallout of betrayal and the uncertain future that lay ahead. What would I do next? Could I ever see her the same way again? The days that followed were an emotional roller coaster. I had given Lisa space, but it was more than that. I needed time to figure out what I wanted and where I stood. The house felt like a prison, each room echoing the memories of laughter and love that now felt so far away. The silence was deafening, and I found myself lost in thought more often than not, reeling from the betrayal. I tried to keep myself busy, throwing myself into work to escape the gnawing pain in my chest, but no amount of work could drown out the thoughts of Lisa and Derek. It infuriated me to think of them together, to think of her sharing moments with him that belonged to us. I even found myself driving past the gym where she claimed to be spending all her time, my heart racing with the thought of encountering her and him. One night, after tossing and turning, I came to a decision. I needed to confront Lisa again, but this time I wanted to lay out the consequences of her actions. I felt the need to be clear about how deeply her betrayal had affected me, and I wanted to set boundaries for the future. I had to be honest with her and myself. When I finally gathered the courage to talk to her, she was sitting on the couch, looking small and vulnerable. The sight of her like that tugged at my heartstrings, but I quickly reminded myself of the pain she had caused. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. "Lisa," I said, my voice steady but firm, "I've spent the last few days thinking about everything, about us." She looked up, her eyes wide with apprehension. "I know I hurt you, Ryan. I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. I'll do anything to make it right." I shook my head. "Apologies are a start, but they don't fix everything. You need to understand how this feels from my side. You didn't just flirt with another guy. You shared parts of yourself with him that you should have shared with me. I don't know if I can trust you again." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, but I steeled myself against her emotional display. You could have come to me when you felt lonely. I would have listened. I would have made the necessary changes. Instead, you chose to talk to him behind my back. This isn't just about the messages, it's about the trust that's been shattered. I know, she said, her voice cracking. I was stupid. I thought I could handle it, but I never expected to feel so guilty. I don't want to lose you. Then what are you willing to do to fix this? I asked, narrowing my eyes. I need to know you're serious about rebuilding this relationship. Are you willing to cut all ties with Derek? No more messages, no more conversations, nothing. She hesitated, glancing away as if the answer was too difficult to say. I don't know if I can just cut him off completely. I mean, we have history. I felt my heart drop. So there it is. You're still emotionally invested in him. I can't compete with a ghost. Lisa. If you want us to work, you have to choose me, not him. Tears streamed down her face, and it pained me to see her like that, but I couldn't let sympathy sway me. I'll do it, Ryan. I'll cut him out. I promise. I'll show you I'm committed to us. Words are just words, Lisa. I need action. I need to see you mean it. Okay, I'll do whatever it takes to prove to you that you're the only one I want. I nodded, not entirely convinced but hopeful that maybe she would make the effort. Then we need to set some ground rules. We can talk to a therapist together if you're open to it. I can't promise that I'll be able to forgive you right away, but I want to try. I want to believe in us again. Lisa nodded, her voice trembling as she said, I'll do it. I'll do whatever it takes. As we sat there, the weight of the moment hung heavy in the air. It felt like a fragile truce between us, and I knew it would take time and effort to rebuild what had been lost. But for the first time since discovering her affair, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could move past this. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that this would be a long and painful journey. Trust was not something that could be rebuilt overnight, and I had to be prepared for the possibility that, despite her promises, it might never fully return. That night I lay in bed, staring up at the ceiling, wrestling with my thoughts. I thought about how I once pictured my life with Lisa, happy, secure, and filled with love. How could we get back to that place? My heart was heavy with uncertainty, but I knew I had to take it one step at a time. As I drifted off to sleep, I made a silent promise to myself. I would take control of my own life, no matter the outcome. I wouldn't let her betrayal define me, and I would emerge stronger, one way or another. The next day would be a fresh start, a new beginning in this tumultuous journey we shared. The following week was a whirlwind of emotions. Lisa and I agreed to see a therapist, hoping to work through the mess we had created together. I was nervous about opening up to a stranger, but I also felt a sense of relief knowing we had a structured environment to address our issues. We both needed to communicate better, and it seemed like this was the best way forward. Our first session was awkward. The therapist, Dr. Mitchell, was kind but direct, pushing us to explore the roots of our issues. I watched Lisa fidget in her seat, avoiding my gaze whenever the conversation turned towards her choices. I could see the weight of her shame pressing down on her, but I also sensed a glimmer of hope. She wanted to make things right, at least that's what she said. Lisa, can you tell Ryan why you reached out to Derek? Dr. Mitchell asked gently. Lisa cleared her throat and glanced at me, her eyes filled with tears. I felt lonely and neglected. I thought talking to him would fill some void. I didn't realize how wrong it was until it was too late. I felt a mixture of anger and understanding. It was hard to hear her admit she felt lonely, but it also struck a chord. I had been so focused on my job and providing for us that I hadn't noticed her slipping away. But that doesn't excuse your choice to cheat, I interjected. You should have come to me. I could have helped. Dr. Mitchell nodded, guiding the conversation. Ryan, it's important to recognize that both of you played a role in the breakdown of your relationship, even if one action was a clear betrayal. Understanding each other's feelings is the first step to rebuilding trust. I took a deep breath, letting the therapist's words sink in. It was true. We both had room to improve. While Lisa's actions were unforgivable, I couldn't deny my own shortcomings either. I had lost sight of the emotional connection we once had. As the session continued, we explored the underlying issues that had led to the affair, and I found myself opening up more than I anticipated. I shared my feelings of frustration and helplessness, how my work consumed me and how I had neglected Lisa's emotional needs. I could see her listening intently, and for the first time I felt like we were on the same page. After a couple of sessions, there were moments of genuine connection. Lisa started to take accountability for her actions, and we began to share our feelings more openly. We talked about the struggles we faced as individuals and as a couple. I was still hurt and angry, but I also felt a renewed commitment to work through our issues. One night, as we lay in bed, I turned to her. "You know, I've always wanted to travel together. Maybe we should plan a weekend getaway, just the two of us. Something to help us reconnect." Her eyes lit up. "I'd love that. It could be a fresh start for us." Her enthusiasm made me smile, but I couldn't shake the lingering doubts. Would this trip really help us heal, or was it just a temporary distraction? We decided on a cabin in the mountains, a place where we could escape our daily lives and focus on one another. I was hesitant but hopeful. I packed up our things, keeping in mind the fragile state of our relationship. I wanted this getaway to be a turning point, but I knew healing wouldn't happen overnight. The trip started off rocky. We arrived at the cabin, and the initial excitement quickly faded when we fell into old habits. Tension lingered in the air as we navigated past grievances. I caught myself holding back, afraid to bring up the elephant in the room, the affair. On the second night, after a long day of hiking, we sat by the fire, the crackling flames casting flickering shadows around us. Lisa looked at me, her expression serious. "Ryan, I know we've both been trying, but I want to talk about everything again. I need you to understand how sorry I am, and I need to know if you're willing to forgive me." I took a deep breath, looking into the flames as they danced. "It's not easy for me to just forgive and forget, Lisa. I still feel hurt, and there are days when I question whether I made the right decision in giving you another chance." Her eyes filled with tears, and my heart ached for her. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'll keep proving to you that I want to be the wife you deserve. I'm committed to making this work." The sincerity in her voice tugged at my heartstrings. I wanted to believe her, but a part of me was still protective of my heart. "I want to believe you, but it's going to take time. I can't pretend everything is okay when it's still raw." "I understand," she said softly. "I just want you to know I'm all in. I'll do whatever it takes." That night, as we sat together, the flames flickering in the dark, I felt a shift. It wasn't a magical moment where all the pain vanished, but it was a step towards healing. I realized that rebuilding our relationship wouldn't be easy, but the willingness to communicate and confront the hurt was a crucial first step. We spent the rest of the weekend focusing on each other, taking long walks and having deep conversations. With each passing moment, I felt the walls I had built around my heart begin to crumble just a little. I was still scared of getting hurt again, but a part of me wanted to trust. As we packed up to leave, a sense of hope lingered in the air. Maybe we could emerge from this stronger, but only if we continued to be honest and committed. I couldn't predict the future, but I was willing to try. And for now, that was enough. As we drove back from the mountains, the sun beamed down through the trees, casting golden rays that danced on the dashboard. It felt like a symbol of renewal, a bright beginning after the darkness we had endured. Lisa sat next to me, her fingers intertwined with mine, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of happiness returning to my heart. We had a long way to go, but that weekend fortified my belief that we could work through this. It wouldn't be easy, and I knew there would still be difficult conversations ahead, but I felt ready to face them. We agreed to keep attending therapy and commit ourselves to open, honest communication moving forward. In the weeks that followed, there were ups and downs. Some days were easier than others, and the shadows of doubt still lingered. I struggled with the images of her with Derek, but I tried to remind myself that she was choosing me now. Every time she reached for my hand, every time she whispered, "I love you," I found a little more strength to push through the lingering fears. One night, as we sat on the couch watching a movie, Lisa leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, "Thank you for giving us another chance." Her words warmed my heart, and I turned to look at her face, seeing the sincerity in her eyes. "I want us to make it, Lisa. I really do," I replied, feeling a sense of determination settle within me. "But you have to know that trust doesn't rebuild overnight. I need you to continue being transparent with me." No secrets. She nodded earnestly. I promise, Ryan, I've learned my lesson. I never want to hurt you like that again. And she followed through. Lisa made an effort to let me in on her life. She shared her thoughts, her feelings, and her fears. It was refreshing to see her open up, to watch her actively work on our relationship. She even unfollowed Derek on social media, a decision that felt like a small victory in reclaiming our connection. One day, I received a text from her while I was at work. Can we do a date night this weekend? Just us. The thought of that simple request filled me with warmth. I eagerly agreed, and we planned a night filled with our favorite things, dinner at that little Italian restaurant we loved, followed by a stroll in the park. When the night arrived, it felt like a first date again. I watched her as she dressed, the way she carefully chose her outfit, the way her face lit up when I complimented her. We spent the evening reminiscing about our early days together, laughing and sharing stories. It was as if the darkness from our past had given way to a renewed appreciation for our present. As we walked hand in hand through the park, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. We were in a better place. The journey had been painful, but it had also brought us closer. We were learning to appreciate each other in ways we hadn't before, understanding the importance of communication, trust, and vulnerability. Later, as we sat on a bench, looking up at the stars, I turned to her. You know, I've learned a lot through this experience. The most important lesson is that relationships take work from both sides. It's not just about love, it's about commitment, honesty, and being there for each other. Lisa smiled softly, tears glimmering in her eyes. I know, I'm so grateful for this chance. I won't take you for granted again. In that moment, I realized that while the scars from her betrayal would always be there, they didn't have to define our relationship. We were now actively choosing to fight for each other, to rebuild what had been broken. As we drove home, I felt lighter, more hopeful. I knew we still had challenges ahead, but I was determined to face them together. I realized that relationships aren't always perfect. They require effort, patience, and a willingness to forgive. In the end, I learned that love can endure even in the face of betrayal, but it requires both partners to be committed to the journey. I wouldn't forget what had happened, but I understood that moving forward meant embracing the new path we were carving together. As I parked the car and turned off the engine, I looked at Lisa, her smile illuminating the darkness of the night. We were no longer just surviving, we were thriving, and I was ready to embrace this next chapter with her by my side.